Trump is going to hold a press conference with Prime Minister Netanyahu today. He's already talked about how, the Gaza situation is just not working, and he wants to do a mass ethnic transfer, which is obviously genocide.
Yeah, I would like Jordan. I'd like to see Egypt take some look. The Gaza thing has not worked. It's never worked. And I feel very differently about Gaza than a lot of people. I think they should get a good, fresh, beautiful piece of land, and we get some people to put up the money to build it and make it nice and make it habitable and enjoyable and make it a home.
They don't want to leave, though. Palestinians say they don't want to leave.
I don't know how they could want to stay. It's a demolition site. It's a pure demolition site. If we could find the right piece of land or numerous pieces of land and build them some really nice places with plenty of money in the area, that's for sure, I think that would be a lot better than going back to Gaza, which has had just decades and decades of death.
Where would those pieces of land be?
Well, they could be in Jordan, and they could be in Egypt, and they could be in other places. You could have more than two, more than one, but you could have more than two. And you'd have people living in a place that could be very beautiful and safe and nice. Gaza has been a disaster for decades.
Would the U.S. pay for that?
I don't think the UN would pay, but I think there's plenty of people that would in the area. They have a lot of money.
I wonder who made it a demolition site with whose weapons. I think what should be more concerning to people is that they're saying that the Gaza population is now 1.7 million people, meaning over 600,000 Palestinians in Gaza are currently unaccounted for. I think it's pretty wild that Donald Trump is in the simplest terms talking about mass ethnic transfer, which is ethnic cleansing, and there's not like a lot of pushback against it, which is expected, to be fair, because when Joe Biden would say, Joe Biden wouldn't say like, oh, we got to move these Palestinians out of here, they got to go somewhere else. But like when he was defending Israel turning Gaza into, in Trump's words, a demolition site, they also didn't question that either. But hey, yeah, I think there isn't pushback because he's just stating in plain terms what our policy goals have always been without the doublespeak of the Democrats. Yeah. I genuinely believe that he's stupid enough to not understand that he's advocating for ethnic cleansing. No, I think he doesn't care. That's why someone said, what if they don't want to leave? A lot of Gazans don't want to leave. If you're wondering why Gazans don't want to leave the Gaza Strip, well, it's because the last time that they left their homes, they were never allowed to return. So for Palestinians, it's even that kind of thing is obviously a significant part of their history and their identity. Their entire national identity revolves around being forcibly displaced from their homes. Anyway, Witkoff had a take on this after. White House National Security Advisor, when asked about Trump's proposal to clean out Gaza, I would push back on the characterization of cleaning out Gaza. I think President Trump is looking at this from a humanitarian standpoint. You have these people that are sitting with literally thousands of unexploded ordnance and piles of rubble. At some point, we have to look realistically. How do we rebuild Gaza? What does it look like? What's the timeline? I think a lot of people, we're looking at very unrealistic timelines. We're talking about 10, 15 years, not 5 years. And so that is what we have to work through. That's sort of what we'll work through. I don't necessarily know what that means, but Trump's Mideast envoy, Steve Witkoff, when the president talks about clearing it out, he talks about making it habitable. Witkoff also says they're in phase 2 of the deal. We're focused on ensuring that the phase 1 ends as it should, that all hostages who are part of that deal come home, including bodies. Meanwhile, during the phase 1 process, when there's supposed to be a so-called ceasefire, Israel is predictably, bombed, as far as I understand, certain parts of Gaza. Hold on. Trump was literally saying the other day that rebuilding over the land in Gaza had real potential. Yeah. They've been focused on the West Bank, which gets zero coverage. There's also that aspect of it too. Another thing is it's also about land ownership. If Palestinians leave Gaza somewhere else, they will have no stake in their own fates and will likely always be a lower class wherever they go. Yeah, they're in. There are already tens of millions of Palestinians that live in diaspora permanently with no means of ever coming back, and even in certain instances visiting their families. You know what I mean? Their freedom to travel back to their ancestral homeland is permanently limited. If you're a Jewish person with no connection to that area whatsoever, and you grew up in any other part of the planet, you can go and live there, okay, with ease. But if you're Palestinian and your grandpa still lives in Gaza, you're going to have a very hard time. You're probably not going to be able to see your grandparents, okay? Your freedom even to travel to the West Bank is restricted. When you're inside of the West Bank, your freedom of movement is restricted. How are they planning on moving 1.7 million Palestinians who refuse to leave? Will he just keep bombing? The displaced Palestinians will also be used as a justification to invade Jordan and Egypt under the excuse that the resistance is operating from there, so they're invading for security reasons. Yeah, there's also that. Also, Donald Trump signs an executive order withdrawing the United States from the UN Human Rights Council and UNRWA.
In light of numerous actions taken by a number of bodies of the United Nations, which exhibit a deep anti-American bias, we have an executive order.
You know what's crazy about this, by the way? Like liberals who say, well, guess what, pro-Palestinians, you deserve this for voting for Jill Stein. Number one, Jill Stein, no motion, okay? Even if all Jill Stein voters voted for Kamala Harris still would have lost. That's number one. Number two, you know which administration also pulled UNRWA funding after Israel lied and said UNRWA was involved in October 7? The Biden administration. He's just making it permanent. This is yet another glaringly obvious example of like the uniparty principles of American foreign policy. Okay? And not only is it uniparty, but what did I also tell you? It only becomes worse, right? It only becomes more right-wing. Oftentimes, the Democratic Party will not undermine the decisions of the previous administration, like with Donald Trump doing the Abraham Accords and numerous other pro-Israel things that greatly destabilized the region and caused October 7, as I pointed out many times over in my coverage over the past 16 months. Biden's involvement before October 7 was not actually reversing any of the decisions that the Trump administration had made and simply continuing it. Then October 7 happens, and then Biden does a genocide. Okay? Biden oversees the genocide and complete ethnic cleansing, right? Attempts of the Palestinian population, making the entirety of the Gaza Strip uninhabitable so that they can inevitably justify mass population transfer. So Donald Trump is basically just moving it further to the right. And then the next administration, if it is a Democrat, if the Democrats ever win ever again, okay, will most likely not reverse those decisions again. That's the one thing that the Democratic Party gives a shit about. The one thing that the Democratic Party gives a shit about nowadays is just like protecting Israel. It's crazy.